So Monica, can you hear me? Oh. Yeah, Monica, I still not, and so Araya, can you hear me? Araya?
Stacked on my desk. Okay, here we go, Mariah.
One. One. 7. Are you back there now? We're going to start singing anytime here, folks. Test. Test. One more time, please.
Mayor, we're ready.
All right, good evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, we have individuals attending remotely as well as on-site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and his current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. I ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
Good evening. You are hereby notified that I have called a special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, to be held Thursday, June 10th, 2021 at 5 p.m. in the 5th floor conference room, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, for a presentation on the Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion Program. Immediately following will be an executive session regarding litigation. Roll call. Burrows. Here. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Walters. Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Alvey.
Here. All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Bach.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission, members of the public. First item on the agenda, as noted by the clerk, is a presentation regarding a training program that we are introducing and doing within the unified government regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a program that our Human Resources Department started to work on. It's scheduled to roll out in 2020. However, due to the pandemic last year, this was really put on hold as we put our focus in other areas. As we came into this year, the governing body made it clear to me, as we've talked to earlier in the year, that this is an area of focus that we need to get implemented within our staff, within our operations. Our department has worked forward to get this in place, and we wanted to come forward this evening to share this with all of you, what our program is and how we are implementing it and what our targets are to get it done through the government in the next year and a half. So tonight I have with me our Director of Human Resources, Renee Ramirez, who's going to lead the presentation, and I will turn it over to her at this time. Renee?
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to present how we as an organization are approaching the initiative of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program for our workforce. With me this evening is Shakiva Christian, HR Manager, and several of the Human Resources team members. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank every one of the HR team members for their countless hours and hard work and dedication that they have given this organization on many of the tasks that they face on a daily basis, working through a new ERP system, assisting this organization through all the COVID challenges that we were presented with. And despite that, the passion that this group has had for this DE&I initiative was definitely one that is definitely worth it, because we're going to be seeing some results. Our team began this journey in 2018 by researching ways to best bring forward this topic that forms the culture of our workforce. Our plan, again, as Doug spoke, was to roll out this initiative earlier. However, with the setback of COVID, we had to delay some things. However, that did not stop us from still working towards initiatives such as developing our employee workforce survey that we completed. As you are aware, there are several factors of importance that benefit employers and employees having DE&I programs. Organizations with DE&I programs result in higher levels of employee engagement and, most importantly, outperform organizations that do not have DE&I programs. Employers earn a deeper trust from their employees, and employees are more committed to their workforce, to their workplaces. Organizations are found to be more innovative and see improved employee performance. And lastly, organizations make better decisions because employees are given a voice to share the feedback about experiences, ideas, and suggestions which make organizations thrive. It's important to recognize elements that foster a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It begins with a commitment from senior leadership throughout the organization. So I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your continued support and your commitment with this initiative and program. It requires an understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. It provides our employees the opportunity for internal growth within our own workforce. Everyone in the workplace should feel that they have the potential for success, to not only advance in the organization, but to know that they have the ability to gain skill sets that will assist them with how they see advancement through their vision. We should also recognize employee differences such as thinking styles, behaviors, and work styles. All of these characteristics is what makes us unique. DE&I programs are more than just making someone feel comfortable or treating someone the right way. It's about being authentic. Most importantly, There has to be that meaningful commitment to examine our unconscious biases on how we view behaviors and organizational processes. We also have to recognize that a diverse organization, regardless of what that family portrait shows, may look diverse, but that doesn't always mean it's inclusive. I want to share with you a 2-minute video that we shared with our senior leadership when we began this journey. This is a video that will challenge us to examine what they call blind spots or our unconscious biases.
Call it analysis statement. Science calls it blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about them. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
So this evening, I ask everyone to take a moment and reflect and do a self-examination of your blind spots. Every diversity, equity, and inclusion program starts with an organization statement. This statement was developed by the Human Resources team and supported by county administration. And it reads, the unified government is a premier employer in Wyandotte County that provides employees equal access to information and growth opportunities while recognizing differences, values, and cultures of its employees. We embrace the differences of thinking styles, behaviors, work styles, not focusing on race, gender, age, sexual orientation, and physical ability. As an organization, we strongly value diversity, equity, and inclusion, striving for the excellence in the services we provide while respecting each other for our uniqueness that makes us one team, one UG, WICO KCK.
Good evening, Commissioners. Shakiva Christian, HR Manager. In the spirit of 1UG, WICO KCK, I'd like to reflect on the history of Wyandotte County and where we are today. As many of us are aware, the unified government, or the Wyandotte County, is one of the most diverse communities, not only in the metro area, but in the United States. But we started that way. If you look, when we were established in 1859, We were comprised of many different ethnicities, from African, Irish, Scottish, German, English, and Danish. And then just 50 years later in 1909, our tapestry, our ethnic tapestry included Belgian, what's that to read? Dutch, Finnish, French, Greek, Italian, Jewish, Lithuanian, Mexican, Norwegian, Polish, Russian, Serbian, Swedish, Slovak, Slovenian, Swiss, and Welsh. This monument that you see pictured is a symbol of those different cross sections of communities that came together to make Wyandotte County in 1859 and was honored on June 7, 2009 by the Kansas City, Kansas Ethnic Council regarding the 150th anniversary or sesquicentennial. Today, Wyandotte County comprises 165,000 residents. The largest Wyandotte County ethnic groups are white at 42.9%, followed by Hispanics at 26.8%, and Black and African American at 24.5%. Our county is one of 2 counties in the nation that has no majority ethnic group. The median age in Wyandotte County is 33.2 years of age. In the workforce in general, there are many elements of diversity, and one of those elements, of course, are generations. We're in a time in our history where a lot of organizations have 5 generations in the workplace, and that is also true for unified government. The 5 generations include the traditional generation, which are those born before 1945. We have 29 of those in our organization. Baby boomers represent those that were born 1946 to 1964. We have 430 employees in that group. Generation X represent those that were born 1965 to 1980, which we have 784. Generation Y, who are also considered the millennials, are those born 1981 to 1995. We have 838 individuals in that category. Generation Z are those born 1996 or after, and we have 110 in that group. So we have many different groups in our organization with different work styles and different ways of thinking that represent unified government today. In terms of our demographics regarding race and gender, on your left-hand side, you'll see that we are predominantly male, with 66% of our population as male. And then 34% are female. Then to the right of that, you'll see that 45% of our organization comprises white male, whereas 17% are white female. And that's approximately 63% of our organization. And then you can also see the other demographics in terms of race and gender on that chart. So we do have 63% in that in the main category as Caucasian. So we are continuing our efforts to attract qualified applicants that are reflective of our diverse community. So recognizing unconscious bias, that refers to a bias that we are unaware of and happens outside of our control. We have to understand our unconscious bias as a step towards overcoming them. Our unconscious bias are things that we do that we think of quickly without really thinking it out fully, quick decisions that we make. So we must train executives, management, and employees on recognizing those unconscious bias to help prevent those from occurring in the workplace. When does it occur? It happens automatically. It's a quick judgment, a quick assessment of people and situations influenced by our backgrounds, cultural environment, and personal experiences, sometimes referred to as implicit bias. It's our attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Those are things that can put us as an organization at risk. So how do we overcome them? By not limiting ourselves to what's comfortable. Once we are comfortable is when we continue or when we cease to grow. Anytime that we must be intentional about being uncomfortable or being comfortable with being uncomfortable so that we can grow and develop and recognizing those unconscious biases. So we must do that by breaking down the silence barriers and creating safe places for uncomfortable dialogue. Practice active listening, providing opportunities to hear voices that have never been heard before. Those that have had a seat at a table may sometimes be those in a homogeneous group. And then once we include those that have never been part of that group is when we become more innovative and more mindful of different thoughts. Focus on what's possible and achievable. Everyone has potential when given equal conditions to succeed. Have a sense of awareness and appreciation, be respectful of each other, find common ground, and don't make assumptions. Once you make assumptions, that's when we tend to go into those blind spots. And be cognizant of our words and actions.
So our next steps. We have conducted an employee survey, as I spoke of earlier, to gauge employee views, attitudes, and perceptions of the organization. This was completed in the fourth quarter of 2020. The results of the survey were shared with employees by Mr. Bach, hosting an all-employee virtual meeting that was very well attended. We need to make diversity, equity, and inclusion training part of our ongoing training efforts for employees and supervisors. This cannot be a one and done event. Continuing with DE&I training on an ongoing basis becomes embedded in our workplace culture, which defines how we value our workforce. Training plans are underway and forthcoming in July of 2021. We need to develop and implement an action plan to embrace DE&I initiatives and communicate the plan to our workforce. One of the tasks we have in front of us is to review our policies, our procedures, our recruitment efforts, our promotional processes, and our retention strategies to ensure that they support DE&I efforts. DE&I should be the center of our organization. This should not be embraced by just some of us. We all have a role to play in this program. This slide is going to represent how we plan to train the entire organization. It is an aggressive training plan, but it's put together to be very intentional to ensure that every individual is trained on this program. Training will be managed by our training administrator, Monica Tyrell. Again, training will commence on July of 2021, and we will finish training in December of 2022. We will offer training in 3 tiers. There will be training for employees, training for supervisors, training for Board of Commissioners, and executive leadership. Training will also be offered 3 different ways. We will host instructor-led virtual sessions, instructor-led in-person sessions, and on-demand self-paced sessions. We also are in the process of developing a new hire onboarding on-demand DE&I training for those individuals who are going to be new in our workplace, and that should be forthcoming in October of 2021. I'd like to leave you with 2 final quotes. The first quote is by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the last quote by Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. Again, we thank you for allowing us this opportunity to share with you how we together can transform our organization that values the uniqueness we all bring to the table that makes us one team, one UG, Waco KCK. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Renee. I think this is amazing that we're doing this. I know that ever since the beginning of this year, this is something Commissioner Johnson has always been bringing up, and Commissioner Townsend as well, and many commissioners on the board. So I'm very happy that we're doing this. This is something I try to, when I was working in an after-school care program, this is something I always try to instill in kids, teaching them diversity, inclusion. And so I think bringing that into our organization is going to make our organization even better. With us being the second most diverse county in the country, it's going to make it so much better. Our community more welcoming, our organization more welcoming. The employees are going to want to love working here. So I'm happy that we're doing this. And I want to turn around. Thank you, Renee, and to all of the other staff who are working hard on this. Last year was tough for everyone, for all of us. Not only did we see a pandemic, but we saw racial injustice and inequity. And I thank you for taking this head on and doing all that you can to do to make Wyandotte County and the UG the best that it can be. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I've forgotten how to do this. Still not virtual. I have to echo Commissioner Ramirez's appreciation for what the administration has done by going forward with this and the efforts put in by everyone, whatever the department is, to put this together. A couple of things struck out as I listened to the presentation and read through it. And one was the point that recognizing that a diverse organization does not mean it's inclusive. And we have to recognize that so that we don't see discontent, feelings that all employees are not valued, legal actions, whatever they may be. So to me, this is a big step that even though we may look different, that doesn't mean that things are happening as they should be. So I think that's a big step to this to going forward with making it different so that whatever you look like, whatever your age, everyone gets the same opportunities. In fact, not just surface, apparently. Other question I had about this is in part 2 of this, where you talk about new hire onboarding on demand, which raises 2 questions. Once this training begins, will it be required every year or with some regular frequency? First question. On the second question, with new hires who are not on board yet, but would come, this on-demand DI training, does that mean it's up to them to elect to do it at a certain time, or there will be a requirement you have to have this? And I would think the ideal time is when they come on. Thank you again. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a wonderful opportunity in front of us. You all have approved for us to have a new HR system, a new ERP system. And one of the initiatives in that ERP system is to reform our onboarding process on how we board employees onto the unified government. So this opportunity is going to be one that we are going to require every person who becomes part of our team. We will be able to assign certain things, certain tasks for them to complete before they actually come to our organization. So that will be like completing their new hire paperwork. It will be this training. And then we will continue to reinforce this program once you get here. The entire plan is to continue to enforce training or provide training. This is not the only training that's going to happen for DE&I. We are also using other resources like our employee assistance program, where we host different sessions for DE&I that employees have been participating in. So our vision is to have this as a continuation to do that.
Thank you. Will it be required, though? Will it be required? Will the DEI training in whatever form it's done be required each year of every employee?
One of the things when you offer a program of this nature is that when you make it required for individuals, you sometimes don't get the authenticity that we're looking at. As an organization, we would like to strongly encourage employees to do this. And I look to our county administrator, who will set the foundation and work with the senior leadership to ensure that every employee goes through DE&I training.
So it will be encouraged but not required.
We'll continue to look at that. We are still researching, and some of the things that have been coming across is that when you make it a requirement, sometimes it's not accepted well. We absolutely would like to require this training for every employee. That would be our ultimate goal.
Okay, well, I would appreciate that, because when you don't make something required, then for those who may be reluctant to go forward with it, we're back to the same situation. So I know that in federal government it's required, and I think part of the strength of a program like this would to have some aspect every year be required. So I would appreciate that you are continuing to look at that so that this program would have some teeth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I have some comments and questions. I really appreciate the work that's being done and the process and the goals. And I participated virtually in one of the sessions, which was several months ago. So it might have been maybe one of your earlier items. But, and I did appreciate being able to participate in that. So my questions are focusing around the current demographic makeup of our workforce. And that's just what caught my attention. So it's not that everything else isn't important, but that just really captured my attention. So you have a slide with the pie charts. Obviously, 60%, 66% of the workforce being male, hit me right off the top. But then when you start looking at the other pie chart that breaks it out by race and ethnicity, we're seeing that, again, white is the highest number of folks working for the unified government. African American is coming in at 21%, which is mirroring almost our community's population at 24%. And Hispanic Latino is coming in at 13%, which is half of the percentage of Hispanic Latino population in the county. So my question is, you have a slide where you break down by age generation. So do you think that your data is telling you that as we hire that younger 40 and under crowd, which I think was the largest group, is it changing? I mean, we certainly, whatever the makeup of our jobs are, we need to work harder at balancing gender. That's way skewed. And I'm just curious if within your age breakdowns, do you have the gender and race broken down by those same categories? And are you seeing that as folks retire and we hire in new in that under 40 category, is the diversity increasing? And if you don't know, that's okay, but that would be interesting to know.
At this point, I do not have that information available. Many of the processes that we take in collecting this data right now are manual processes that we go through. That is going to be resolved by our new ERP system, but the team does continue to collect stats, and we are continuing to work towards getting statistics on what does our applicant base look like, even by positions that we're posting. And just this week, the team was working on those demographics. So we could present that to you all once we complete that.
I would add too, Commissioner, and I think you recognize that in your question by talking about the younger workforce with the Hispanic population. That demographic has changed dramatically in our community in the last 15 years, really. If you look at its percentage as a workforce, we do have employees. I mean, the fact that we have 29 employees in our workforce that are over 76 years old, shows you we have people that work here 30, 40 years. So you have a career shift completely changed to recognize a community that we used to be in the 12 to 15% Hispanic, and we've moved up in that 27 or where we're at now. So that really does play in. Another interesting one is the comparable, and we have looked at that number, and I don't know that we have it current, but when you break out public safety versus the rest of the workforce, we do seem to be more reflective in the non-public safety arena than we are in the public safety arena, which is an area of challenge that we've recognized and are trying to do more in that area.
Commissioner Burrows or Commissioner Ramirez? Commissioner Burrows.
Commissioner Jones. Thank you, Renee. In the companies I've worked for, when you have a program for the employees, one that is either strongly suggested or recommended or mandated, the employee signs off on a document and it goes into their file that they've had this training as a form of acceptance of what is expected of them once the training, plus it identifies the fact they've had the training. Are we planning on doing that? Or I know you talked about the ERP. Is ERP the same as an employee file that whatever test they complete, whatever program they go through, it documents that and automatically goes into a folder that can be remedied should actions come forward needing to look in that folder?
Yes, actually, as we roll out the training, there are like 4 different sessions that training that you will go through. And when you complete those trainings, you will get a certificate that becomes part of your personnel file.
Great, thank you. And I believe that the younger population today is more accepting of differences. They are more determined than I think those of us that grew up in a different time. They're more accepting of that diversity and embrace the culture differences. And I think that will assist us as any organization moving forward with new employees and change cultures within a business. So I think this is long overdue. It does send a strong message, but I do believe it's long overdue. And I commend you for bringing it forward this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I wanted to mention, Commissioner, that we do have preventing harassment training, which is a little different than our diversity that is required. That talks about our policy regarding preventing harassment based on protected categories. So we do have that in place. The diversity is more, global than that and working harmonious with different demographics.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Ramirez, for this very necessary conversation that you've led us.
Commissioner, you might want to pull your microphone close.
That's never been a problem for me before. Can y'all hear me now? Yes. All right. I do have another voice that I can put on if necessary. It's the wrong day though, Mike.
I'm curious as, I have a few questions, so I'll preface that. What aha moments came about as a result of the employee survey? And while you're looking at that, I'll ask another question.
Was Ashley
Good
here?
answer, probably one that was me, and
Yeah.
it maybe hits you from a different perspective, because the employee survey, pay was an issue, and it noted out there that was not an aha moment. I think one that was, for me, was, and it was a moment that I think was very positive on our staff, that maybe caused me some concerns with my management, was the question of not holding all other employees accountable for their work. And to me, that was a demonstration by a large number of employees that came into our organization that said they take great pride in what they're doing and work hard and want the person next to them to do it too. And that's a message back to my management team that that's on us, of our responsibility to make sure of what we're doing and where they're at. But there were a few things, but that's one that really resonated with me because it hit on multiple points. Renee or Alan had other points that they would share as well.
Yes, I do have those conclusions based on our employee survey. And as Doug stated, the first was ensuring poor job performance is dealt with effectively. The second was increasing pay for employees if possible. The third one was finding ways to encourage employees to be more motivated about accomplishing their mission. The fourth one was providing more opportunities for professional development. The fifth was doing more to make employees feel as though their input is valued.
Mhm.
And that is definitely screaming that our employees want their voices to be heard.
Yeah.
And offering more opportunities for advancement.
Okay.
We make an investment in the staff that we bring on to this organization. And when you make an investment of that type, which is a very expensive investment, you can't stop investing in our employees. We have to continue to find the funds to provide our employees with the tools that they need to advance themselves, to be more successful. We have to continue to invest in training efforts to make sure that our employees have the best tools available and are trained to do the jobs that we pay them to do every day.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. There seems to me, and I think we've talked about it implicitly, that there's an external component in the sense that we are dealing with a very diverse community. It was stated in the presentation. Should our organizational statement speak to the fact of not only our internal diversity, but also how we deal with an external diverse community? Should it be explicitly identified in our organizational statement?
That is something that we absolutely can take under consideration. When we developed that initial statement, it was just a statement that we used as an example of what our organization can develop. But we
Okay.
definitely can always go back and revisit that statement.
Yeah, I'd like for you to really give it some consideration. I mean, because it's easy for us to identify the fact that we are a diverse community. I think we should be a little bit more explicit in terms of not only how we deal with things internally, but also identifying the fact that we know that we're dealing with a community that is diverse as well. And the internal capacity, our internal makeup only reflects that. So however you can make that mishmash of words I just said make sense, I'd like for that to be considered. The Mid-America Regional Council training, what are the specifics of that training? Are they doing the training for us, or what part are they playing in this?
We do have a partnership with the Mid-America Regional Council on Training, and I have Monica Tyrell here who has been coordinating that. So I'll ask her to come forward to kind of explain what that training looks like.
Okay.
Good evening, Monica Tyrrell here. I have been working not only with Mark, but with another consultant, and they are actually building and tailoring this training program for us. This consultant is keenly aware of the sensitive nature and the introspective look that we'll need to take at ourselves as we do this training. And they are working with us to make sure the vocabulary is right, the terminology, the semantics, but they're very keen on making sure that we are able to track and get everyone on board with this training. I had an extensive meeting with them yesterday regarding what it will look like to get department teams organized to participate in the trainings, as well as they're sending me the curriculum in advance so we can review. Doug, myself, Alan, and Renee had an opportunity to do an example of what on-demand training looks like. And it's very engaging. You have an opportunity to make sure that you see where you're headed when the little quizzes are coming up throughout. So there is an amount of engagement and accountability throughout the whole process. It is a huge undertaking. And right now for our very first training that we're going to do on July the 9th, we're just going to keep our numbers limited to make sure that the technology, because there's another agency that is managing the technology as well. They have an LMS set up so that they can ensure that people complete the Zoom trainings that are going to be conducted live. So if a participant leaves halfway through, they will definitely have to go back and take the test and finish all 4 sessions to completion. We will be managing and tweaking as we go to ensure that every level of participation from employee, management, and executive will have an opportunity to fully be engaged, fully schedule. It's going to be a scheduling challenge for me because we will still be doing our in-house mandatory trainings along with our EAP trainings. We've also had some discussions about doing micro learning. So once we have our ERP up and running, there may just be a quick 5-minute lesson for people to remind themselves, for people to be able to see and reinforce the learning that's happening here with these initial 4 programs. But it will take us up to December or August 2020.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to make 2 statements and then I'll be done, Mayor. Without one, I think I want to know, or I think we need to talk about the issue that language plays in our training, how we deal with a community that speaks different languages, and maybe even it has some relevance internally as well. I don't know, but I think we should at least talk through that and figure out where we stand on that. And then my final one is, if we require harassment training, I don't see any reason why we cannot make DE&I training required. I think the DE&I training should be more than requested, strongly encouraged. I think the DE&I training should be required. Thank you.
We have time for one more question or comment. Any commissioner who would like to speak who has not spoken yet? Commissioner Philbrook.
So thank you again, and for putting so much into this. It's somewhere in all of this, and probably later down as you develop this, are we going to create like train the trainer sort of situation? Like, so we train people within our organization to keep training.
Right.
And then for them who are still, that are going to be the trainers, have continuing classes to keep them up to date.
So at the completion of this first round, we will have a survey to see what kind of training, well, how the training actually took, what stuck, and we will revisit what we will be doing going forward. So I think it's important for that external agency to be the one to deliver the training. I feel my role in delivering preventing harassment, those ongoing in-house trainings are appropriate. But with something like this, it's good to have an external agency with many perspectives, because we've talked about ethnicity, but we've not touched on disability. We've not touched on many other types of blind spots that people have. So it will be important for us to have them kind of monitor, engage where we can go next so that we can continue to build.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to, Harold, I back you up on, yes, it needs to be required. And even though we have folks who want to push back on that, and maybe they don't want to take it to heart, if you hear things enough and you say it enough and you study it enough, sometimes it seeps into your little pores. And therefore, eventually something happens, something will click. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And so I have to go along with you, Harold, on this.
And if I could just state, I have actually worked with the agency making sure that this is delivered as a mandatory training, but without calling it that. So we're not going to use the word necessarily, but it's for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, did you have some closing?
I just wanted to recognize this. This seldom happens. The individuals in this room tonight, and I would ask them to stand. This is almost the entire Human Resources Department that is sitting back here in the audience. So as you see them sitting in here, this is the group that takes care of all of our employee issues as they move through and cycle through. And as Monica noted, she is the only trainer. So as she noted, the mandatory training versus required, we're still working through, and that's why Renee was reluctant to answer that question, to come with an affirmative yes, because getting 2,200 employees cycled through this by December of 2022 is aggressive. And to lay down the term, you're required to get it done, yet we may not be able to have the capacity to get it in place. I've got to watch how we do that, but that is our objective, and then that we would continue that going forward. So there are certain things to that point, but thank you. This group works very hard to keep up with many things that happen in our organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. Even though I'm going to make a statement out of being approved to say, I'm going to say, if you notice, look at the ages of these wonderful people that are helping whip us into shape. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I entertain a motion for executive session regarding litigation.
I move that the commission go into executive session until no later than 6:55 PM to conclude with no action being taken, to allow the commission to consult with our attorneys and to discuss confidential matters related to pending claims and litigation as permitted by the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in the discussion, and that we return in open session for the 7 PM full commission meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll reconvene. We'll begin now. We'll reconvene at 7 o'clock for our full commission meeting. So let's get started.